Welcome to this episode of Go There on Fourth. I'm Pastor Jason Barnett, aka the Dirt Path Pastor, and this is a Christian video podcast about faith football and fantasy football. I'm not so much I'm more of a football junkie, and kind of sharing my version of fantasy football, Hard Knocks, with you, journeying with you through my fantasy football season, sharing some terrible fantasy football advice and making some awful game picks along the way. I'm going to jump right into my Week 13 picks, starting with the Thursday night and early Sunday games. Currently, I am 104-75 on the season. Hey, I'm above 500 in my game picks, so I feel pretty good about that. So Thursday night, tonight's matchup is the Bills versus the Patriots, and I am taking the underdog in this one. I'm taking the Patriots, who are at home against the Bills, and I feel like the Bills have just been skating by against some very much inferior squads. So I think the Patriots are going to get the job done here. They're surging at the right time of year, just like the Patriots do. So again, I find it very difficult to get picked against the Patriots in November and December. And even though they're playing against the Bills have not looked like the same Bills team that was playing at the beginning of the season. So Steelers versus the Falcons. I'm picking the Steelers in this one. This one's going to be a grinded out type game. The Falcons are finally starting to look like a team that we all thought they were going to be a team that was trying to tank in order to get a top draft pick in the draft. But that being said, they are a physical team. The Steelers' offense isn't exactly a powerhouse either. So I think this is going to be a hard-fought matchup between two teams, just grinding it out, trying to get to the end of the season. Packers versus the Bears. And, I really should pick the Bears in this one. Everything on paper says to pick the Bears. But there's one problem. That problem is that Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears. And if Aaron Rodgers plays in this one, the Packers will get the win. So I'm picking the Packers here. Jaguars versus the Lions. These are two teams making a late season surge. Neither one of them are going to make the playoffs. Neither one of them are a playoff team. But they're making progress and moving forward. Doug Peterson is the right coach for Lawrence. Lawrence is finally starting to make some big league throws and big-time moments. We saw that last week. The Lions have taken on the personality of their head coach, Campbell, and they're playing gritty, they're playing tough, and they're in the mouth. But I'm picking the Lions in this one. Jets versus the Vikings. I'm picking the Vikings. About picking the Vikings. One, because of the Vikings. The one thing the Vikings do, and if you're a Vikings fan, you know this, is that they get your hopes up and then they let you down. But the last time the Vikings faced a top defense, that was the Dallas Cowboys. And what happened? They got absolutely demolished. Playing football back there. The running game was non-existent. So I'm picking the Vikings, but I'm nervous because solid defense. And that's where the Vikings struggle. And now the Jets, they may have a quarterback in Mike White. So we'll see what happens before. Commanders versus the Giants. I'm picking the Commanders in this one. Don't really have any commentary for you other than I'm picking the Commanders. Titans versus the Eagles. The Eagles struggle against teams who are more could have, should have, maybe were close enough to beat them. The game that they've lost this season, remember they were out-muscled in that one. I think the Titans have that formula. Yes, I know Derrick Henry got held to 2.2 yards per carry last game. I don't think that's going to happen in a row. I do worry about the Titans' offensive line versus the Eagles. The Eagles do have a solid secondary, but I do think the running game of the Titans will take over, and their defense will give the Eagles some problems. Broncos versus the Ravens. Picking the Ravens in this one. Browns versus the Texans. I'm picking the Browns, although I'm not expecting a whole lot from Deshaun Watson in his first game back against his former team. I mean, he hasn't really played in 2 years. How good could he really look? We'll get a good idea, a good glimpse this weekend. Now, if you're one of those people that kind of just stash him on bench, I don't think that's a wrong move. Again, while I'm thinking he's not going to do a whole lot this first game back, you never know. He could go off. He could look great. And he's playing against the Texans, so there is a possibility for that. So stashing limits and maybe even trying to roll with him in this bye week. Or if your starting quarterback is, Kyler Murray or Sam Darnold, or any of the other Panthers quarterbacks. If you're rolling with one of the Panthers quarterbacks, what do you have to lose with going with Deshaun? So those are the Thursday night games through the early Sunday game picks. Now let's move into the section of this podcast where it highlights faith. Again, this is a Christian podcast about faith, football, and fantasy football. And so for faith, I always like to share a brief devotional with you. And something caught my attention today. And it was really last night, but I got more information on it today. And the Rock, the story, there may be some other news groups that shared. I know the Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson shared this on his Instagram account. And there was a scene where The Rock was making restitution. Restitution is where you go back to a previous wrong. And he was talking about how when he was a young man and he needed food to kind of, help him as he was working out and getting his body in shape to play football and eventually, go on to wrestling. But he couldn't afford it. He didn't have the money to be able to go to the 7-Eleven gas station and pay for the Snickers bar that was his workout meal. So he just took them, shoplifted. He broke the law. He stole from the owners of the 7-Eleven. He took money out of their pockets. Granted, it probably wasn't a lot of money. I can't imagine you make a lot of money per candy bar. It's probably more than that you think. We get on the car guys for crushing us. But have you ever stopped and studied how much we make when we buy a 20-ounce soda or a Polar Pop or a drink at McDonald's? And I'm sure the market would surprise us with candy bars. But again, stealing something. The Rock was taking something that didn't belong to him without paying for it. That was wrong. And we know what one of the Ten Commandments says: "Thou shalt not steal." But in a completely different situation in life, right? He had an amazing run in the WWE as the People's Champ. He is Hollywood's movie star now. Black Adam is his latest one. I haven't seen that one yet, but that's his latest movie, and he's been in all kinds of movies since then. So he's in a different spot financially. He's been blessed, and so in this moment, he was able to go back and make restitution. So he goes back to the 7-Eleven that he used to steal candy bars from all the time. I'm sure none of the workers, well, maybe most likely none of the workers that worked there when he was a young man still work there, and it's highly likely. And even if it stayed in the same family, it's probably not even owned by the same person that started out. It's probably been passed on at this point. But that's beside the point. The Rock, remember, that was the store he stole the candy bars from. So he went back and he bought every single Snickers bar that they had. And after he paid for those Snickers bars, and he paid for some other groceries for some other customers that were there too. After he paid for all that, he left behind those. So that way, if there's another person that came in like him, they wouldn't have to still take one that was already paid for. Restitution. And the Bible shares a story about a man who makes restitution with this as well. And it's in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19, and verses 1 through 10 here. And I'm going to read the whole section to you, then we'll kind of talk about it. So Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. And there was a man named Zacchaeus who was a tax collector. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but he was not able because of the crowd since he was a short man. So running ahead, he climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus since he was about to pass that way. When he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, because today it is necessary for me to stay at your house." So he quickly came down and welcomed him joyfully. All who saw it began to go, "He's gone to stay with a sinful man." But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, I'll give half of my possessions to the poor. And Lord, if I anything from anyone, I'll pay back 4 times as much." And Jesus says to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save the lost." So Jesus was willing to go to Zacchaeus' house. And this is the Zacchaeus that we sing the song about in Sunday school. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. Zacchaeus was short, supposedly. And so when Jesus was in his area, in order to see Jesus, he climbed up in the sycamore tree, and Jesus took notice of him and said, "Zacchaeus, I'm coming to your house today. Be ready." And the religious leaders and the Jews in the area took offense to this because of who Zacchaeus was. Zacchaeus was a tax collector. He, in our day, if someone works for the IRS, we're leery of them anyway because we don't like to pay taxes either. But for the Jews, this was different. They were occupied and under the control of Rome, and so to be a tax collector, that meant they betrayed their countrymen and went to work for the Roman government who was oppressing them. And it wasn't enough that they were working for the government that oppressed them. When it came time to collect taxes from their fellow neighbors, what they would do is they would not just take what was owed to Caesar or local governor. They would take extra. They would extort them and make a little extra on the side. Essentially, they got rich stealing from their neighbors. And that's how Zacchaeus had gained his wealth. That's how he had gained this house. That's how he was able to provide this meal for everyone that was coming because Jesus was there. He had all this wealth because he extorted them. But Jesus was willing to go to his house anyway, knowing who Zacchaeus was. And that act of kindness by Jesus changed his mind. And that's what Zacchaeus says to Jesus here in verse 8. He says, look, I'll give half of my possessions to the poor. So what he's gained at this point, Zacchaeus is telling Jesus, I'm going to make restitution for the sin that I've committed. I'm going to make restitution for betraying my countrymen. I'm going to make restitution for stealing from them. And keep in mind, Zacchaeus has probably stolen from so many people at this point, he probably couldn't keep track of all who it was. So he was trying to think to show Jesus how much he loved Jesus and appreciated Jesus for seeing him as a person and being willing to come and spend time with him and be at his house. So Zacchaeus says, all this money that I've gained from stealing from my neighbor and from my fellow countrymen, I'm gonna take half of it. I'm gonna give it to the poor. But he doesn't stop there. Zacchaeus keeps going. He says, Lord, if I have extorted anything from anyone, I'll pay back 4 times. So he's willing to, if someone, I don't know if he has a ledger of the names or what, or maybe there's faces that stick out more to that. Zacchaeus is like, hey, if there's someone in here that's I've wronged, not only will I pay them back, I will quadruple it to show them how sorry I am and how much this interaction with Jesus has changed my life. And what does Jesus say to Zacchaeus in response to Zacchaeus' effort to make restitution? This is what he says. He says, today salvation, because Zacchaeus too is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man has come to seek and to save the lost. Jesus tells not only Zacchaeus attendants at that dinner that salvation has come to Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus has been saved. Zacchaeus was why Jesus came. It was to save men like Zacchaeus, like you and me. Now, we could look at this and walk away with the wrong, mistaken thought that restitution to earn salvation, but that's not true. We don't earn salvation. We can never do enough good things to earn salvation from God. We earn salvation through repenting. And repenting is confession of sin on our part, and then a change of mind about that sin and a change of behavior as a result of the change of mind. It's like you're living your life walking one direction. You realize that that's the wrong direction, and you walk the other way. And that's exactly what Zacchaeus did. He came down from that tree, went with Jesus, and his life was changed forever. So when Jesus says salvation has come to this house today, Jesus isn't referring necessarily to the action that Zacchaeus did. Well, he is, but it's not because of the action of Zacchaeus that Zacchaeus has experienced salvation. Salvation is what's taken place in the heart and mind of Zacchaeus because he's had a change of heart and of his life. He went from stealing from his local countrymen to walking with Jesus. Restitution is an outward sign of repentance. It's a demonstration of the change of mind and the change of direction. That's what Zacchaeus did here, and that's what the Rock is doing. The Rock is knew that stealing was wrong even back then, but he knows to make this right. Zacchaeus, that's the way I was before. I stole from my countrymen. I did what I thought was right, but now you know what? my life, and I'm following Jesus now, and I want to show everyone that I'm not the same person that I used to be. You and I can do that in our lives too. Again, it doesn't save us, but it shows everyone that we're not the same person that we used to be. Now, we're opportunity to make restitution with people, the people that we've wronged. One, we've wronged so many people that they were strangers to us, and so we didn't really know them, so we don't even know we don't even know how to go find things right. Maybe the person that we've wronged has since died, and there's no way to go make it right with them, or perhaps the person that we're wanting to make it right with, they're not accept that gesture on our behalf. They are not convinced that we've changed, or they don't want to know that we've changed. That happens too. With The Rock, I'm sure it wasn't the same cashiers that were working that 7-Eleven. Probably not the same owner. But he able to make it right with those people. But he was able to make it right with his heart and his mind. Able to make it right by giving half of his possessions to the poor. He's able to show the change that take place in his life by giving back to the ones that he had, by giving it 4 times as much. And again, we may not be able to do it that extravagantly when we make restitution, but there's something small we can do to demonstrate the change in our life. And it's when restitution is not repentance. It is a repentance that's taken place in our heart and mind. Restitution shares that you and I are different now because of our relationship with Jesus. Well, if you enjoyed that devotional, be sure to check out ravnaz.com. That's the website for Ravenna Church of Nazarene, where I serve as the pastor. My name is Jason Barnett. We have services every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You are welcome to join us. Everyone's welcome, no matter where you're from. We'd love to have 550 Main Street here in Ravenna, Kentucky. Maybe you live too far away, or you want to check us out. You can check us out on our Facebook page. We live stream the entire service at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And maybe you can't make that live. You can go back and watch the video later, or you can always check out the weekly sermon through the dirtpastsermonpodcast.com. That's my weekly sermon uploaded in podcast form. So, all right, let's continue on with my Sunday afternoon pick. So, Seahawks versus the Rams. I'm picking the Seahawks in this one, the Fighting Genos. Yes, they're going up against the Rams defense, but the Rams defense, let's face it, the Rams are not a playoff team. They're not making the playoffs. So they're either going to play for pride or they're just going to play for a paycheck. See how I'm willing to bet they're just playing for the paycheck at this point. They're that talented that even when they're playing for a paycheck, they're going to stifle and make things difficult for people. But I'm picking the Seahawks in this one. Dolphins versus the 49ers. Man, I went back and forth in this one. It's two great coaches, two great teams. I definitely think the 49ers are a Super Bowl team. I think the Dolphins could make a run, depending on how things fall for the playoffs. And I think this is going to be a fantastic game for us to watch as fans. But in the end, I think the Niners are more physical. And I think the Niners are going to find a way to get it done. Although I know they're dealing with some injuries on the defensive side. I know Christian McCaffrey is kind of banged up a little bit. But I still think the 49ers are going to find some way to get it done. Chiefs versus the Bengals, picking the Chiefs in this one. Chargers versus Raiders. Chargers, although if this one goes to overtime, again, I think the Raiders are going to find some way to pull it off. I think if it's a close game, the Raiders might find a way to win this one. I'm sticking with the Chargers because the Chargers need to win. But the Raiders are kind of in this spoiler mode at the moment. All right, we're on to the section called My Team Struggle. And this is kind of my fantasy football hard knocks, where I've been sharing my fantasy football journey with you through the season. I'm in a 12-team PPR league with some church folks and friends. And not only is it PPR, but it's got some other custom scoring things too. For completions, for quarterbacks, you can get targets for receivers, and you get partial points for carries for running backs as well. My team is currently at 4-8. And we're playing for a playoff spot, although those hopes are very, very slim at this point. I'm sitting in 9th seed, and out of the 12 teams that we have, 7 teams make the playoffs, and I'm 2 into the bottom 5, so that's not good. And what that means, though, is if I do not find someone to make the playoffs, that means that there are only 3 more episodes for season 1. So if I don't win, that will be it for this season. So hopefully I can find a way to keep it going. So here's my 13. At quarterback, I'm rolling with Geno Smith versus the Rams. Again, I'm concerned a little bit because of the Rams defense. But again, the Rams defense has not been playing like themselves because the offense has not been playing well at all. So I'm thinking the Seahawks have a lot more to play for. Geno Smith has a lot more to play for. So I think they show up ready to play and find a way to get it done. Versus the Raiders, and I'm super excited about that matchup. The Raiders are ranked 27th versus opposing running backs. They've allowed 1,294 rush yards this season. So I'm excited versus the Raiders. Running back 2, I've been rolling with James Conner. Well, for the first time, I put him in the running back 2 spot. And he's on bye this week. James Conner just had the best game of his season last week, and now he's on bye. And a moment for me. So I only have really one option here at RB2. That's Jamal Williams. He's going against Jackson. While Jamal Williams has been splitting carries, he's got 13 rushing touchdowns this season. So he is a red zone machine. So I'm going to roll with him at the RB2 spot. Receiver 1, I have Tyreek Hill going against the 49ers. And Hill was listed early in this week, but I think that was because he left the game early Sunday due to cramps. But now he's not listed as questionable at all. Yes, he's going against that San Francisco defense. Yes, that San Francisco defense is physical, but again, they do have some injuries that they're dealing with. Some of those injuries are in the secondary. Who will that impact more? Will it impact Waddle more or Hill more, or will it free them up both up at times during this game? We'll see. Tyreek Hill's a handful even when you have your starters in there. It's only going to be that much more tougher for the Niners. But rolling with Tyreek Hill. Receiver 2, I'm sticking with Keenan Allen, and he's going against the Raiders. Keenan Allen's finally back. Again, last week my team had the best game of its season. We scored 256 points and still lost, which was frustrating. And I kind of got a glimpse of what my team could have been if my team had stayed healthy. But anyway, Keenan Allen versus the Raiders in his 2 games back so far, he's had 10 catches, 143 yards, and a touchdown. And that's against some pretty tough defenses. Now he's going against the Raiders. I like the match. Dalton Schultz versus I put him against the Cowboys. That doesn't make sense. Dalton Schultz can't play the Cowboys because he's on the Cowboys unless he gets cut by the Cowboys and picked up by the Colts, which the Colts already have 3 other tight ends that get playing time. So what would be the point in that? So I just have a typo in my notes. But Dalton Schultz versus the Colts. I am a little bit concerned because the Colts defense is stingy. But my main question is, does the Colts defense still care? I mean, they've been playing their tails off all season, and they're really the reason the Colts have been in any of the games, and the Colts have won games. The offense has been dreadful, has been awful, but the defense has been very stingy and very good. I'm lamenting the fact that if we had actually had a good offense this season, where would this Colts team be? Time in my lifetime where I can look back at this Colts season and be like, that's one of the better defenses we've ever had. But anyway, will that Colts defense still care? I don't know. So, I mean, yes, I guess the Colts still technically have a very playoff chance. I think if you look at the graphics that the networks are sharing, it still shows the Colts as in the hunt for a playoff spot. They're one of 3 teams in the hunt. So I guess, but if they lose this week, I think they're very much in of things, and it'll be different. But anyway, all right, at my flex spot, I have a dilemma because I was rolling with Jamal Williams in the flex spot, and the way this league's set up, you really want 3 running backs in the lineup, because the Colts, the running backs, they get their partial points for carries, and the completion points as well. So that makes running backs, second importance to quarterbacks. But here's the downside. My only other running back is Michael Carter, and he's going against the Vikings. He's questionable, and he's only rushed the ball 14 times in the last 2 games and only gained 40. So I'm not feeling very good about that. When I went to free agency, the running back spot in our league is a ghost town. There's really nobody out there that's available that I'm like, I'm willing to drop what I have to pick up and try and make things happen. So my other options are I could go with Paris Campbell at receiver, but he's going against the Cowboys, and this is a terrible matchup for a struggling offense. Do I really want to put my playoff hopes in the Paris Campbell basket? Yes, if it does work out, there could be a tremendous, because they could end up paying more attention to Michael Pittman or even Alex Pierce than they do to Paris Campbell. But again, is it really worth the gamble? But then again, my other idea is Deontay Johnson, the Falcons. And that's a gamble too, because Johnson's been consistently getting lots of targets, but with very little results. But at the end of the day, right now, I'm really leaning like I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson, unless I just find something in free agency that makes me feel good about it between now and tonight. So at defense, I've been rolling with the Steelers the last couple of weeks, but I'm making a change this week because I'm going with the Buccaneers as they're squaring off against the Saints. And I'm making this change. Why? Because when I went back and looked at what happened between the Buccaneers and the Buccaneers had 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, 6 sacks, and a touchdown. Overall, the Bucs defense in the season has only had 2 games with 1 sack. And now they're going against the Saints, a team that they sacked 6 times the last time they played. Do I think they're going to get 6 sacks again? No. Do I think they're going to score another touchdown again? Hopefully, but probably not. Interceptions again? Probably. I mean, are they going to come out of this game with 5 turnovers? That's not likely. But there is hope there. There's reason to believe. So I'm going with the Buccaneers on defense. Kicker, I made a change. I was been rolling with the Cowboys kicker. The stinginess of the Colts defense. I don't necessarily think there will be a high-scoring game. I could get this one wrong. I just don't think it will be. So I'm going with Matt Wright of the Steelers versus the Falcons. But again, I'm not sold on that move either. Changing kickers again before we reach the weekend. So you may be listening to me talk about my fantasy football team and my struggle for this week, and you think, why are you so pessimistic? Well, I'm playing the number 1 team in our league. I just scored 256 points last week and lost because I played with the 3rd best team. And now I'm playing the number 1 best team in our league, and he has won 10 straight. He's only scored less than 220 points 4 times. And during his win streak, he's only done that 3 times. I'm not very hopeful. Although he has Lamar Jackson at quarterback, who's lately, and he has a couple other starters that are a little bit questionable, but not in the sense where I'm really thinking they're not gonna play. So that's where my team stands. What about you? Where's your team at? How things going for you? I'd love to hear. Post in the comments how your team's doing. What are you struggling with this week? I'd love to hear from you. Post in the comments. And yeah. All right. Continue on with my game picks. We're ready for the primetime games. Colts versus the Cowboys. And why do they not flex this game? Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe that doesn't start till next week. I don't know. Or maybe the networks just love the drama. Right now, the Colts are kind of running their own mini soap opera called the Unstable Horseshoes. Right? It's made for daytime television. When they did the Colts end season Hard Knocks last season, they should have done it this year with all the drama that's happening. But even though the Colts are running against the Cowboys, I'm picking the Colts to win. Again, this is one of those times where I'm a Colts fan. I pick the Colts to win. And this week I'm picking them not because I actually believe in them. I'm picking the Colts because I'm a fan. That's what true fans do. Saints versus the Buccaneers. I'm picking the Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers are number 1 in that terrible NFC South. Somebody has to get in the playoffs and will this squad into the playoffs somehow. And then they'll make a bit of a run. Will they make the Super Bowl? I don't think so. But I do think they will make a run just to annoy everybody. All right. Bye week Batmans. We're down to weeks, right? With this week 13 and week 14 will be it for buys. But this week, the Cardinals and the Panthers are on bye week. And if you happen to have Kyler Murray, James Conner, DeAndre Hopkins, or anybody on the Panthers, you're searching for somebody to step into your line. Now, if you have someone on your team from the Panthers, you've probably been searching for a hero for a while now. I mean, unless you have Deontay Foreman or Hubbard, but even then, Foreman is an inconsistent hero, right? He shows up some games, and some days you sign the bat signal for him, and he doesn't show up at all. So that's what this section's about. It's about shining the spotlight in your free agency. A player that can step in and make a difference in your fantasy football lineup for the week. Now, I'm basing this off of who's available in our league. There is not a lot out there. There's a lot of slim pickings, but I will give you my bye week Batmans based on who's available in our league. At quarterback, a player I think you can go with that may go off this week, that or at least will have a decent game. I think you can. Jaguars. I think that would be a good quarterback to fill in for you on a short notice, on a short bye week. A quarterback you don't want, and you probably already know this, but I'm telling you anyway, don't go with Marcus Mariota. I know the Steelers are ranked 21st against opposing quarterbacks right now, but it's Mariota. Don't pick him. I watched him play in prime time a couple weeks ago on Thursday night, and he was playing a game of some sort, but it was not quarterback. He is inconsistent. There's a reason why he's not consistently been the starter somewhere. Yes, he's been consistently the starter for the Falcons all season long, but that's not going to last forever. He is not the guy, and he is not the guy to lead your team. At running back, I think you can go with Jordan Mason or Tyron Davis-Pierce from the 49ers. A couple reasons. One, like I said earlier in the episode, Christian McCaffrey is dealing with I think he's going to play. However, if he doesn't play, both of these guys will be a viable option. And even if he is playing, with Mitchell being hurt, one of them is going to have to step up and be the backup. And I wouldn't be surprised if split carries to kind of determine who that is. Again, it's a Shanahan offense, and the Shanahan offense tends to roll with the running back that gets the hot hand. And McCaffrey, again, with him being banged up, cannot do a 20-carry load like sometimes this offense. So Jordan Mason or Tyron Davis-Pierce, their backs that were available, both of them are available in our free agency. They should be available in yours. They wouldn't hurt to pick up for this week. A back to stay away from, I would stay away from Alexander Mattison versus the Jets. He's a backup for one thing, and two, he's going against the Jets. It's a tough matchup. The Jets, so I would steer clear of him. Receiver, a receiver at Batman I think can save you right now is Darius Slayton. He's going against the Commanders. Yes, Daniel Jones is his quarterback. They're more of a running team than a pass. And Slayton's been getting 4 to 6 targets a game, getting about anywhere from 50 to 75 yards in those games. Again, there's enough volume there. If you're in a deep league like me, you're digging around trying to find somebody. Darius Slayton maybe at the receiver spot. Joker, I would stay away from Allen Lazard. He's going against the Bears, and that's not the problem. I'm not scared of the Bears defense in this matchup. My problem with Allen Lazard is not the matchup. It is Allen Lazard is not getting the same looks from Aaron Rodgers that he was getting earlier in the season. Watson's kind of emerged. We're seeing the tight end get used more. We're seeing Randall Cobb finally stepping up and getting some more catches. So I would be leery of Lazard. Tight end. A tight end I think that you can go with is Juwan Johnson against the Buccaneers. Yes, this is a tough matchup, but in week 2, Juwan Johnson had 7 targets. So he was targeted in that first game. So that means there's something that they like schematically about their tight end versus that Buccaneers defense. So I would if you're searching for a tight end to plug in, you don't have one of those top tier guys, solid backup, Juwan Johnson may be a guy that's worth taking a look at. The guy I would stay away from is Gerald Everett. The more I look at the stats, yes, he's going against the Raiders. Yes, this is a favorable matchup, but it's really going to be dependent upon if he can score a touchdown because he's only got 4 games of 50-plus yards and only 2 touchdowns on the season. And if you go back and look at the last when they needed that touchdown, who did they throw it to? They threw it to Eckler. So Eckler gets a lot of those goal line throws that typically the tight ends get. So I would be leery of that. So those are my bye week Batmans. Hopefully they help you out. Hopefully, even if you disagree with me, at least I made you think about it and process it, right? All right. Well, be sure to check out my other podcast, the Dirt Pat Sermon Podcast. It's available on all the podcasting apps. It's my weekly sermon here at the Ravenna Church of the Nazarene. Be sure to check it out. Be sure to check back in Tuesday where I recap what happened.